Today's music history moment, is about William Byrd, who was an English composer. So sit back and relax and enjoy what I have to read today for you about William Byrd. Hopefully you're learning lots from this, probably more than you ever knew. William Byrd, who lived from 1543 to 1623, was an Elizabethan and was not... Start again. William Byrd was an Elizabethan and as not so only had difficult with spelling, but also had a tendency to put capitals in the oddest of places. The capital of England, however, was still London, where Byrd spent a great deal of his time. Of Byrd's parents, nothing is known, although it is reasonable to assume that he had the requisite number, one of each. He spent his childhood in Lincolnshire, where it is possible that his father was the original Lincolnshire poacher, since Byrd was appointed organist to Lincoln Cathedral at the age of 20. We must assume that he had some previous musical training, otherwise he couldn't have lasted as long as he did, which was about 10 years. After that, Byrd went to London and became a gentleman of the Chapel Royal. In addition, he and another composer, his teacher Thomas Tallis, sorry but we really haven't had more time to talk about him, were granted a monopoly on music publishing by Queen Elizabeth. This gave them exclusive right to print any music, either plaid or sunge, in any other language whatsoever. Whether this right extended to include music that was striped or polka-dotted, as well as plaid, musicologists can only assume. Not only were Tallis and Byrd the only ones allowed to print music, they were also the only ones allowed to print the ruled paper upon which music is composed. They had, in other words, cornered the market. Modern day composers who are finding it difficult to have their work published would do well to keep this tactic in mind. Elizabeth was fond of music. One biographer of her time said she sings quite exceptionally with both voice and hand. It must have been sign language. You know, there's this great picture of her right there. I don't know how well you can see that picture of Queen Elizabeth singing. Some of the music Byrd wrote was intended to be performed at home by people looking for something to do after dinner. In the case of madrigals, each part was printed separately or at clockwise angles on a single sheet, so that everyone could sit around a table and sing. Since only the very clever host could be counted upon to always invite the right number of voice parts to the dinner party, the music often was designed to be suited to other voices or viols. That way, any number of vocal lines could be played by a stringed instrument, although it was sometimes difficult to understand the words. If everyone played and no one sang, it became impossible to understand the words. Madrigal singing had become increasingly popular in England ever since the publication in 1588 of a set of madrigals largely of Italian origin called Musica Transalpina. I take the time to mention this interesting fact only because no history of English Renaissance music would be complete without it, and it's likely to turn up on the exam. I hadn't warned you there was going to be an exam. There isn't. Most of Byrd's music was written to be performed in the context of a church service. For either church, Byrd wasn't choosy. If so, most of it is vocal music. Someone had come up with the devious observation that the more the choir sang, the less the clergy preached. So this was considered to have been a good thing for everyone except perhaps the clergy. Although Byrd is chiefly known for his sacred music, it ought to be remembered that he also wrote entertaining little madrigal, Suzanne Fair sometimes assaulted was by two old men desiring of her cause, which is about exactly what you think it is. By the time you've sung the title, it's half over. Even though one of the chief characteristics of a madrigal is the ability to use music to paint a clear picture of the words, this one is not perhaps, luckily, a very good example of that. That is the end of our reading for today. A little bit about William Byrd, just a little bit about William Byrd. Next week we will come back with Jeremiah Clarke, again, a composer that I'm sure you've all heard of. And we're setting the stage for where we end up with, the Beatles, and eventually Taylor Swift, Kanye, and Cardi B. And that's where we end up. So get this, because this is where it all started. Maybe we should be ashamed and upset with these people. But either way, have a lovely week, and because you're at the end of it, it's Friday, and we'll see you next time in our music history moment.